Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing Goku, and more specifically, Goku's increase in power between the end of the Frieza saga and the early stages of the Cell saga, and discussing just how much strength Goku increased in terms of that 3+ year period of time. And also, of course, as I usually do in these types of videos, which you could also see on my channel, I'm going to give some in-universe evidence for how strong Goku was before this and how strong he was even afterward. And in terms of this, it is, of course, power scaling, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of debate. So let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments throughout the course of the video or after it's over. Additionally, if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for all my future videos. And if you like this content, leave a like and share it out because it really helps the channel. But with that being said, let's get into this video. So let's start a little bit earlier on Namek in terms of Goku's overall power. Now, when Goku is on his way to planet Namek, his power level, of course, as we saw in the previous arc, was a little bit over 8,000 before he utilized the Kaioken, which at his maximum pushed his power up to 32,000 with the Kaioken times 4. This is back when power levels were actually a thing in Dragon Ball, so I'll be using a little bit of them as we go on throughout the course of the video. Now, with that being said, Goku trained on his way to the planet up until 100 times gravity, over 10 times the gravity that he had trained under on King Kai's planet, which is also going to become a major component when we discuss how much power Goku gained after all this point. But nonetheless, Goku was exploiting his Zenkai boost that he got from being a Saiyan, as it says right here that Toriyama wrote, "Around and around he goes, working his body and chi almost to death, and then refreshing himself by eating the sensu, as the 7 beans given him by Master Karin are already down to 3. Whether he realizes it or not, Goku is living and reliving one of the primal cycles of the Saiyans, gaining strength by facing and overcoming death." Now, in terms of Goku's power when he arrived on the planet, he had multiplied his power level about 10 times from what we saw when he fought against Vegeta in the previous arc at this point, through a combination most likely of a Zenkai that he got after that fight and then his training. As he goes on to show during his fight against Captain Ginyu, Ginyu states that he thinks that Goku's probably around 85,000 in this form, which is his base form that we see 70,000, which goes on to be proven right here when Goku uses the Kaioken and ramps his power up with the 2 times boost to being 180,000, as we could see Captain Ginyu says right here. So Goku, with just the Kaioken times, the first initial Kaioken, which doubles his power, it's not 1.5 or a number of the different fan theories we've seen. Toriyama literally says in the manga during Goku's fight against Vegeta that Kaioken regular is times 2. They just say times 2 and, the other multipliers, usually for dramatic purposes. But nonetheless, Goku could probably use his power of 180,000 as, a kind of a minimum with the Kaioken, because at this point, for all we know, Goku could have ramped his power up to 900,000 by using the Kaioken times 10. And this would only go even further than this, making this even 900,000 seem like a joke by comparison, because after all of the fighting that was going down, Goku fought against Captain Ginyu at this point and had his body actually stolen by Ginyu. However, at this point, Vegeta, who had been getting Zenkai boosts, beat down Captain Ginyu in Goku's body to the point of near death, smashing him into the ground, until of course Goku would eventually take back his body from Captain Ginyu and then be placed in the healing chamber. During that point in time, Goku's body was sensing the power of Frieza and all the other fighters that were battling against him during that final climactic fight of the series, which, began with everyone fighting Frieza and eventually Goku jumps in. And as a result, his body was powering up. And I went way more in depth into this in a video you could see in the top right corner, where I discussed how Zenkai boosts actually work in Dragon Ball Z. I go really in depth with that. But nonetheless, at this point, Goku had healed his body. And what do we end up seeing? Goku's power becomes massively greater to where he's actually able to fight against Frieza when nobody could even do anything to him in this form at this point, including Vegeta, who had just gotten a big Zenkai boost at this point. Goku's power at this point had increased to being 3 million according to the guides, which is a huge jump from that 90,000 being like, I think like 333 times or something. Obviously the mathematicians down in the comments will probably tell me the correct number. It's also kind of like how Frieza was like 666 times stronger than I think Vegeta in his 180,000. So Toriyama liked to play around with those numbers in that math when it comes to Frieza's final form, of course. Now, during the course of this fight, Goku would go all out and try his very best, not only with his 3 million power level, but also by using his Kaioken times 10 and then times 20. But none of it would work. Even the Spirit Bomb would fail. Up until Frieza killed Krillin in front of Goku's eyes. Goku was completely aware, as we could see with this completely shocked expression on his face, his pupils being completely whited out to show just, the complete sense of loss here in this situation, that Krillin would not be able to come back at this particular point in time. He didn't know everything would occur in terms of them wishing back Guru and then them wishing back everyone after that. So at this point, he gave in to his rage and to his desperation to everything that was occurring, and what occurred was that he became a Super Saiyan, or Super Saiyan, the legendary form of the Saiyans that hadn't been achieved in a very long time, at least 1,000 years according to Vegeta. Not that he is necessarily the person who knows literally everything about Super Saiyan, as I also talked about in another video where I discussed why there is always meant to actually be more than one Super Saiyan than Goku. Nonetheless, what ended up happening at this point was that Goku's power had increased by 50 times to being 150 million, which allowed him to defeat Frieza in his 120 million. This would lead into what would occur next within Goku surviving the planet's explosion by getting into a spacecraft and going to planet Yardrat, during which he would do some training. This is something that is actually foreshadowed briefly in the scene that we could see right here, which is that everyone is using Porunga in order to bring back those who were killed by Frieza on Namek, and they try to bring Goku back, as they see right here, or at least bring Goku to them. Instead, Porunga says that Goku refuses and he will return on his own. That's because he's off training. Of course, Master Roshi says it's because he's afraid of his wife, because he knows that she's the real strongest in the universe. And, maybe she, through her training with Goku, was able to level up a lot. But no, seriously, the fact of the matter is that Goku was off training. And he wouldn't come back for a significant amount of time after this. As it says that over 130 days pass every single time the Namekian Dragon Balls go inactive. That's a Namekian year. And of course, there were multiple examples. So a lot of interpretations have gone into what this line means. Does it mean that only one entire year has passed since the destruction of Namek? Or does it mean that close to 2 years have passed? It really depends on the translation. Either way, this gives Goku a good amount of time in which he was on Yardrat up until what we see here, which is that Frieza comes to planet Earth with the ability, of his power being increased as Mecha Frieza, as he even says right here, that he wants to show Goku the new and improved him, and that he is going to prove that he's the strongest in the universe. Now, as I discussed in a video that you could also see in the top right, I discussed how Goku at this point in the original timeline and Future Trunks timeline was actually the one to kill King Cold and Frieza. So we know that Goku is still more powerful than Frieza. However, we don't really know how powerful Frieza became here. He says he's stronger than he was. I'm sure that he can feel that internally within himself. But at the same time, Frieza was never able to actually sense energy during the fight on Namek. So he doesn't really know just how powerful Goku was compared to himself, other than the fact that Goku beat him in a fight. So maybe Frieza was mistaken that he would actually be able to defeat Goku even with his Namek level of power with this ability, and just in typical Frieza fashion, oh, I've been improved, so I could definitely win now, but he doesn't really know that. Same thing with regard to King Cold. We don't really know just how powerful King Cold really is compared to full 100% power Frieza, because there are contradictory statements made after this where they talk about how there's another big chi just like Frieza's. However, they also discuss a little bit later on that Frieza can become way more powerful than this in terms of his overall strength, which, is said by Gohan that, after Yamcha comments that he's that powerful, and Gohan says, this is nothing. He gets way stronger in this. So a lot of people have said that King Cold, and there's a lot of evidence to say that King Cold is more powerful than Frieza, at least on Namek. But then you can argue that since they were saying that they sense the power like Frieza's, and then Gohan says that Frieza gets way stronger in this, that means that King Cold is only relative to suppress Frieza. Nonetheless, the fact of the matter is that Goku is the one to defeat them in the original timeline, in the future Trunks timeline. However, in this one, what ends up happening, well, another person shows up, which is future Trunks, who becomes a Super Saiyan and easily kills King Cold and his father. Now, I'm bringing this up because the fact that we're able to get a little bit of estimate about Goku's power momentarily after this occurs. Now, with this being said, I do want to say something real quick about this fight. We don't actually see Frieza go full power in the manga, at least to our knowledge, which when I mean that, I mean we don't visually see it occur, which is to say that maybe Frieza is going full power with his mechanical enhancements and everything right now, but he never bulks up the remaining amount of flesh, if he can even do that at this point. And additionally, he doesn't drape himself in his aura. He doesn't, use anything other than this one blast against Trunks. And then in turn, Trunks just catches him off guard by blasting the ground, and then when he goes up in the air, cuts him in half, and then proceeds to chop him into pieces and blow him up. So it's not like Frieza and Trunks really had a drawn-out battle like he did with Goku, where, Trunks was allowing him to do everything that he could possibly do in order to fight back. Instead, Trunks just took the opportunity to kill him the second he possibly could, because he saw him as a threat, and, future Trunks usually doesn't mess around. Same thing happened with King Cold, where Trunks allowed King Cold to think that he had defeated Frieza just because of the sword, which is kind of an idiotic thing to think when you really think about it. And at this point, Trunks then took this advantage, blasted King Cold through, and even when King Cold, in the anime version at least, was begging for his life, in the manga version, it seems like he didn't really survive that at all, considering you could see his pupils completely whited out right here. And then Trunks didn't even leave the body just in case. He vaporized it, then blew up Frieza's ship, and there's still little chunks of him left over. I guess you could see his tail right here, but nonetheless, he was able to utilize his Super Saiyan power to easily kill both of them. However, for all we know, Goku could have done the exact same thing. In fact, it's almost a guarantee, if not a guarantee, because of what we go on to see very shortly after this, which is that Goku, when he is speaking to future Trunks, explains that he was actually about to teleport in there and fight the two of them himself before he sensed Trunks' power. And then Trunks, of course, realizes that he screwed up history, despite the fact that, he should have realized that this would have happened, because how else would it have happened in the first place? Trunks asks Goku to become a Super Saiyan. At this point, Goku transforms, and Trunks responds to this by saying, "Thank you, you look just like me as a Super Saiyan." And he becomes a Super Saiyan as well. The two of them talk about how they look, and, everyone's talking about their power. Trunks goes to use his sword against Goku, but because Goku realizes that there is no malice within Trunks and that he would have stopped and not killed Goku, he doesn't even attempt to do anything. This is when Goku powers up his finger. He drapes his finger enough energy that he puts into it to be able to block against Trunks' sword. And in turn, he is doing what he can in order to put that away. Now, a lot of people interpret this scene as saying that Goku is way more powerful than Trunks here. That's not necessarily the case. When you think about it, what is Trunks doing when he uses his sword? He is draping something in his energy. He's infusing his energy into it to attack somebody. Trunks is using a sword, which is a natural force multiplier. However, it is still, a weapon nonetheless. And the thing is that Trunks could theoretically use a lot of different things in order to do this, because of just how much energy he wields. He probably could have cut Frieza in half with a, pool inflatable noodle or something like that, a feather, if he really infused enough ki into it. And so as a result, Goku infusing as much ki into his finger to match Trunks doesn't mean that Goku is many times more powerful than Trunks here or something like that. However, it does still show just how skilled he is comparatively. Nonetheless, we do see that Trunks wasn't actually going all out. He does talk about how, Goku is really impressive, that he's greater than the stories, but Goku says right here, you weren't coming at me with all you had. So the fact of the matter is that this isn't necessarily something that we could again say that couldn't really going all out because he doesn't want to kill Goku, or, he doesn't really, he's probably afraid of something happening, him screwing up history by killing the guy he's trying to save with the heart medicine. So as a result, we do see that Trunks, holding back, kept up with Goku, who at the same time obviously wasn't really fighting Trunks. He was just trying to parry his different attacks. So either way, there is a chance that both of them are on a similar level of power in terms of all this. Maybe Goku is a little bit stronger here, but nonetheless, I don't think that either of them are many times more powerful than Goku was on Namek. And additionally, I don't think that they really get there until a little while afterward. Now, in terms of Goku's training, he goes more in depth into everything with regard to what he was actually doing there, which is that he was primarily learning to use teleportation, Shunkan Ito, or the instant transmission, and also to become a Super Saiyan at will, which he was doing to practice. He wasn't really training to make himself way more powerful, but rather to master a technique and also to make it to where he would be able to use his greatest form at the time anytime he requires, which he then did against Trunks. So with that being said, there's nothing here that really indicates Goku is way more powerful than he was on Namek, unless, your definition of way is not a multitude of an increase here. He even says right here that he didn't have much time, so that the Yardratians only really taught him one thing, and that took a whole lot of work. So really, Goku's main focus, as I just said before, was on doing these two different things rather than increasing his physical capabilities. This, of course, leads into Goku being told by Trunks that the androids are going to show up in 3 years and kill everyone, and this leads to Goku and the others training after Piccolo informs everyone of the abridged version, let's say, of what occurs during this period of time, that the androids are going to come, that he's going to train with Goku and so on in order to battle against them. And we even see a panel here that Toriyama drew, because the majority of this in the manga is off screen, where we see all of the different Z fighters training, in which we can see right here, for example, Vegeta, Krillin is meditating, Yamcha is training here, Tien and Chaozu are training, as well as Piccolo training with Gohan against Goku as a Super Saiyan. So this is all going to play a big part in terms of how much power Goku gained, because we do have to look at Goku's training partners. Nonetheless, when everything happens up next, we see that everyone shows up 3 years later in order to fight against the androids. Now, there are two very different trains of thought when it comes to how powerful everyone here is when they go to fight against the androids. There's a lot of people who believe that Goku and the others are now vastly more powerful than Goku was on Namek, to the point to where base Goku and then all of the other characters really are more powerful than Frieza and even Super Saiyan Goku on Namek. This is a big thing that I've heard a number of times over the years. And however, there is the other point of view, which is that Goku and the others got stronger in their base forms. However, Goku, Vegeta, they both have Super Saiyan. So as a result, they weren't necessarily multitudes of times stronger in their base form, but they still were a lot stronger than they were in the previous arc because of the fact that they trained. However, when it comes to everyone like that, which one really seems a lot more realistic? When you really think about everything that happens, especially in this arc. I mean, after all, does it really make sense to say that Goku Goku and the others became hundreds of times more powerful in just their base form after 3 years of training under normal gravity on Earth, with the only exception being Vegeta during this particular example, the humans themselves aren't really depicted as being that much weaker than Goku in his base form. After all, when Goku goes to transform against the androids, it's only after he becomes a Super Saiyan that everyone starts to talk about just how strong he is. Like Tien, for example, saying that he is so amazing as a Super Saiyan and that he's like being in a different dimension from them in terms of his overall power, as we could see with the statement right about here, where he says, "Astounding, what power. I never knew being a Super Saiyan meant. It's as if he's in a different dimension from us." Stronger than his Super Saiyan on Namek or stronger than Frieza on Namek, then that must mean that like all the other humans that showed up are realistically somewhere in that particular range as well. However, maybe they're comparable to Goku's base form or even a little bit above that before he becomes a Super Saiyan. But again, when we actually look at, everything that happens in the arc, doesn't really make sense to say that. Another thing is, too, a lot of people take this line right here by Piccolo very literally, where he says that if you don't think you stand a chance, don't bother coming. The enemy this time will be unthinkably powerful. We don't want anyone who's going to drag us down. And then, of course, Yamcha jokes, "Yeah, don't bother," and Krillin laughs, "Ha ha ha." But at the end of the 3 years, all of them still show up. Are we really going to believe that on their own, training without any sort of special training, Tien, Yamcha, Krillin, Chaozu, all, and even base Gohan potentially, all became more powerful than Frieza and his 100% power on Namek, and also Super Saiyan Goku from that same arc? That doesn't really make any sense. Nor does it really, line up with the idea that, maybe we can buy the idea that Dr. Gero made androids more powerful than Frieza. Like, when they go to fight against Dr. Gero as Android 20 and Android 19. But for them to be hundreds of times stronger than Frieza, especially when it comes to 17 and 18, and then 16 and everyone else like that also doesn't really line up, and it becomes that much harder to suspend your disbelief. Especially when, again, all of the characters were training under normal gravity except for Vegeta. Vegeta's increases make sense because he was training under multiple times the gravity that Goku did, which is explained right here when he goes to Dr. Brief and he asks him to make 300 times gravity room because he saw that Goku trained under 100 and he can handle at least 3 times that. And so he trains incredibly harshly for these 3 years, as we could see right here, and then it's expanded upon also in this manga panel that Toriyama showed us of this cover. So it makes sense that Vegeta, because he's not just training under normal gravity, would be able to increase his power significantly. However, in the case of Goku, and, many of these other fighters right here, it doesn't really make sense to say that they increased their power that significantly, because Goku went from training under 100 times gravity and getting massive Zenkais in life or death battles to just training on Earth with 2 weaker characters. Let's remember that. Piccolo and Gohan were like 1% or less of Goku's power at this particular point in time when they started training when he's a Super Saiyan. Neither of them was even as strong as his base form. So obviously this means that for 3 years, Goku never really was able to go full power or all out against either of them. Instead, he was always holding back and probably honing his Super Saiyan a little bit in terms of what he can do with being in that form in terms of ki control and everything like that, compared to, increasing his power many-fold. And that's also why Vegeta was able to surpass him, because not only did he sense Goku's power when he was fighting against Trunks, but additionally, he also is training under significantly higher gravity, because it'd be like training under really heavy weights, lifting, benching 500 pounds, deadlifting 800 pounds like every single day or every other day, and then suddenly lifting, 50 pounds on the bench, or, even 5, or again, 1% of that amount. Does it really make sense for somebody to get that many more times stronger under significantly less? People can just train under normal Earth gravity for 1 day, especially off screen, and get as powerful as Toriyama wrote. Instead, the characters required greater degrees of training, which we would go on to see later on, where Goku and many of the others trained in the hyperbolic time chamber, which had higher gravity than on Earth. It had greater swings in temperature, and also they were able to train in a condensed space while sparring with someone, in this case Gohan, who Goku had transformed into a Super Saiyan, teaching him how to do it, and then the two of them sparring as Gohan's hidden power kept coming out more and more and more, as he's leveling up his Super Saiyan form to being the mastered grade 4 full power right here than it does during this 3-year time skip period. So really, by the time of the 3-year time skip, I don't think that Goku became vastly more powerful than he was on Namek in terms of like a multitude of times stronger. Another thing is too, when it comes to the fight against the Ant, this was something that surprised him when Goku became a Super Saiyan in front of him, and the calculated limits. The androids were created in order to surpass the power of Goku's, I'm guessing that Dr. Gero knew at this point that he was a Saiyan based upon his DNA and, kind of factoring in exactly how much power he could realistically get. However, nonetheless, does it really make sense to think that Dr. Gero thought that Goku, in his base form androids, Dr. Gero in number 19, likely not being that people try and say that they are. Rather, I would say that Goku is maybe a couple times stronger than he was on Namek, if that, because the fact that really when you think about it, the vast majority of time that Goku's training was not meant to increase his power, but rather to help the others and also to master his Super Saiyan to the point where he can turn into it normally, and also to be able to use the instant transmission. So Goku definitely would have gotten more powerful if we want to throw out power levels, even though Toriyama had abandoned the concept by now. Maybe his power level was like 250 million or something like that, maybe, upwards of 300 million if you really want to start to go in that direction. But I definitely don't think that his power level was like in the billions at this point, like people like to make it out to be, or even beyond that, because the fact that there's literally nothing that ever actually says that Goku got that gigantic of an increase overall, or any of the other characters for that matter. There's only really one line you could talk about with regard to the power of the humans, which is when numbers 19 and 20 sense the power of Yamcha. And number 20 says that a being approaches with abnormally high energy reading, and it exceeds all known human parameters, and this is where they assume that it's Goku. And this, of course, ends up being Yamcha. So Yamcha definitely became more powerful, but again, they don't know just how powerful Goku became at this point, because the fact that they weren't even keeping track of him after Namek. And, all known human parameters doesn't necessarily mean, that he is over the power of Frieza at this point or anything like that. I also wanted to make a note about the character of the Z Fighters, and more particularly the fact that regardless of what odds they were usually up against, the human fighters tended to show up. It didn't matter during the Saiyan saga that the Saiyan and even Yajirobe all showed up to the fight, along with Chaozu of all people, in order to battle against these enemies, because the fact that their world was at stake, and also because they're hardened warriors at this point. Yes, even Chaozu, who weren't exactly going to sit out the final battle for the fate of their planet and just go run and hide while the androids attacked. So them showing up doesn't in any way mean that they're stronger than the power they sensed from Super Saiyan Goku, Super Saiyan Trunks, Frieza, or King Cold those 3 years ago. And so when it comes to Goku and his power overall, I would say that he only really got a many-fold increase when it came to his time in the time chamber, training with Gohan, increasing his base power vastly because of their sparring between the two of them, and of course also mastering his Super Saiyan form at the time, which many people think gave him an increased multiplier. I don't think that Goku or the other characters got vastly more powerful during that 3-year time skip compared to, let's say, Super Saiyan Goku on Namek. Vegeta was more powerful than Goku at this point. Trunks and Goku were, all somewhat relative in terms of that Super Saiyan range. Piccolo is right below that. He scaled up to Goku's level of power, but I don't think that they're many-fold more powerful or multitude times stronger, nor do I think that all the base people, the humans and and everyone like that are stronger than Frieza after 3 years of off-screen training under normal Earth gravity. Like I said, this isn't exactly Dragon Ball Super now, is it? But let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments. If you're new here, consider subscribing and enabling notifications so you can stay up to date with all my future videos. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you like this, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.